everybody. I am Chuck from Teachers Discovery and Flangoo. You've probably seen some of my emails. And if you've ever attended any of the coffee shops or coffee breaks that we put together, that's also me. It is really, really nice to see everybody out here this evening. I'm so glad you could all be here. And a huge thank you to Jamie for being here and hosting this incredibly awesome workshop event. Now, this workshop is going to be the first Wednesday every month. So this is our very first one ever. And then there's going to be another one on February the 2nd. And all of that will be in an email that I'm going to be sending out to everybody. Along with things like the certificate, in case you missed it, there is a certificate for attending. That's going to be sent out to everybody. It will be in an email later this week. And there is a link for a download. I'm going to put it in the chat, but in case you miss it, that will also be in the email. So you can always get that at a later time. So without further ado, Jamie, I'm going to let you go ahead and take it from here.
Gracias, Chuck. So thanks everyone for joining us tonight. I'm super excited to be sharing with you and hosting, and I'm going to share my screen in just a minute. But I wanted to introduce myself first. So my name is Jamie Lincow. I have a master's in education and also in Spanish language and literature, and also a PhD in Spanish language and literature. And I've just always loved Spanish since I started in 7th grade learning it. I would call myself a language enthusiast. I love to read in Spanish, listen to music, and it's my thing. And it's always been my passion to impart that same enthusiasm on my students, as most of us world language teachers like to do. Is really, we're enthusiastic, we're high energy, and we like to share that with our students. So this is actually my 20th year teaching, and I'm officially teaching for half of my life. So I feel like that's a huge milestone, and it's kind of scary at the same time, that I feel like I've been teaching for quite a while now, but feel like I've had enough experience to really see all the different things in education and know what I like, know what works. And that's why I'm so excited to share Flangoo with all of you today, because there's so much great stuff on here that's been working well in my classroom. And I'm excited to, show you those tips and tricks of what's been going right. And especially in this climate that we're all teaching in, we could use a lot of exciting activities to help us. And we know that education's a little bit different now. And we're always looking for things that are easy that we can put into our repertoire and really, create a connection with our students and really enhance what we're already doing well in the classroom. So I currently teach Spanish level 2, 3, 5, and AP, but I've really taught everyone out there. And some of the stuff that I'm going to share with you today has to do with Spanish classrooms, but really any world language teacher could use Flangoo and take away some of these tips and tricks. So feel free to share with your department members. We have French and German in my district, and I've shared some of those tools with them as well. So this isn't just a presentation about Spanish. It really is about Flangoo and some of the things that I'm using to teach some Spanish lessons, but it really could be for any world language teacher out there at any level. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and start off with just a couple things that I've learned from Flangoo that I've shared with my students, and just a couple things that are really working well. So if you have the downloadable, or if you're taking notes somewhere, these are just a couple shortcuts that I found, or tips and tricks that are really working well for any reader or any level. So I'm going to show you the first page here is just the welcome page, and it shows you continue reading. These are some of the titles I'm going to chat about tonight. And then you see the different levels. Very easy to manipulate. There's some favorites here. Just really easy to go through and see what we're offering on the Flangoo website. And you can scroll through, and there's tons of readers at all the different levels. I'm going to show you first here. I'm going to scroll over. I'm going to open up La Leyenda here. So every time you start and you open up, you're going to see the title. It's going to tell you how many, what level it is, how many chapters, how many quiz questions, which are really cool. I'm going to show you that next, and the language. And then if students are selecting their reader, they get a little snippet here. There's a little fragment in English, so they understand what it is. So maybe that intrigues them. If you're giving them a choice, like pick anything in level 1 or pick anything in level 2, they can quickly scroll through and find a reader that interests them. There's like a little fragment there. It tells us how many unique words, how many total words, and it also tells us the bulk of the tenses. And this one is mostly a present tense reader. There's also words to know that you could click on here, and it'll present a list of vocabulary, like a downloadable. If everybody can see that, that might be something you want to hand out to your students ahead of time. It might have some vocab words that you're already using in your classroom, or you might want to add a new vocab list if it's something that, you know, is something that you wanted to do as an extra or as an enrichment. So we already have that ready for you to just download and print. When we go to the story, some of the really cool things I like, first of all, you can scroll through all the chapters that you want right here at the top, and you can get to any chapter very easily. There's a glossary at the end with more vocab words or words that kids can look up. There's a page of credits, but it's really easy and user-friendly to manipulate. So we have chapter 1 and we have our text. This is the part that I really like. Well, one of the parts that I really like. So when you scroll over the word that's underlined, it gives your reader a quick definition. Now we've gone through and picked out different words that we think are words that the reader really has to understand in order to know the story, or it might be words that might be a little bit more advanced than they're used to, or obscure, or it might even be a colloquialism, but the reader can easily scroll over and get a quick definition. I like this because we all know sometimes our students aren't always on the browser page that we want them to be. So maybe you're locking their screens, maybe you're using GoGuardian, or maybe you're using another tool so that students can't be internet browsing while they're on the screen. You can set their screen just to the reader. So now they don't have to search for what the word means. They have it at their fingertips. It also is confidence building because they're reading and they're getting a quick definition, and maybe they're understanding it even better. So my students really like that they can just do a quick scroll over and get that vocab word. I think that's super helpful, especially for the younger readers, the more beginner levels, as they're starting to read in a world language. That confidence builder, I think, is essential. So at the bottom, when you go through to the end of the chapter, great pictures here in all the different readers. Then we have multiple choice questions. This is a newer feature that I really like using this year. So at the end of the chapter, maybe you have a quick reader and they get through it before your time's up that you want to start, going over what they read. They can easily go through here, click on something, submit it, and know in real time if it was incorrect or not. Go on to the next one. Again, click on it, submit, and see if they were correct or not. I'm just randomly guessing here. So this tells me I didn't do it well enough. I didn't understand. Maybe I just skimmed right through it and I have to read that chapter again. So I think that's a really nice feature. Last one that I want to show you here is the narrator. This button here, if you were to play it, I guess I can play it and you can hear what it sounds like for a second.
Capítulo 2. Popocatépetl, el guerrero más valiente.
So I don't know how well that's coming in over the speakers from my laptop here, but there's an authentic native speaker that is reading the chapters to the students. I really like this for a couple different reasons. If I don't want to read the story aloud to my students, I can have a reader read it if I'm projecting on the smartboard, and we can be following along. I could pause it at any time. I could define a word. I could take questions from my students, but I don't have to be the one reading. In all honesty, I am not a native speaker. I put on my best accent that I know how, but it's nice sometimes to have native speakers to practice for listening, or so that they can hear different speakers' accents. And there are a bunch of different speakers, so not every reader has the same narrator. I also really like this function here where you can speed up or slow down how quickly the narrator speaks. That's super helpful, because if you're a beginner reader, your readers might be looking at it word for word for word. So they want to hear it nice and slow. Whereas the more advanced readers want to hear it in authentic, our level 5s or even our AP students, they need to hear it in authentic speech. So I'm going to speed it up for them. what I like if I was the student, and I'm sure this is going to relate to some of you, I couldn't get enough Spanish in high school. I listened to Gloria Estefan's Mi Tierra all the time, and I would sing along with her lyrics. And anytime I would sing along in Spanish, it would help my pronunciation. That's really how I learned how to perfect my O and my accent and everything. If I was a high school student or even middle school student, I'd be going home and reading aloud with the narrator. That would be me after school, just so I can practice my pronunciation. And that's a great activity that I ask my students to do. I'll have them go in the hallway with partners and take turns listening and reading along with the narrator. It's just another great tool for them to practice pronunciation and listening. Okay, so now that I've walked you through a couple of my tips and tricks of what I like to use on Flangoo, I'm going to show you a couple different readers that I'm using to enhance some grammar units that I do. And this year, actually, I've done the majority of them, but I've done all of these with different levels. So if you click on the Flangoo at the top, it takes you right back to that main page. Like I said, it's very user-friendly, very easy to use. And the first one that I'm going to walk you through is called Una Sorpresa. Okay, I'm going to click open that reader here. So this is a Flangoo level 2. So this could be an intermediate reader. I've done this with my Spanish 4s. You could also do it with a Spanish level 5. You could always use this with an advanced level class as well as a review of imperfect and preterite. And what I've learned is that if I pick a reader that might be a little bit less academic than the type of class that I'm teaching, for example, if I were to do this with a level 5, they really understand it quite quickly, but it's also confidence boosting for them. So I wouldn't just pick a high level because I'm teaching a high level class or I'm teaching an honors level. Sometimes it's nice to give them a book that they really understand at first glance, and then we pick it apart and analyze it, and it leads to more conversation and overall confidence building. I found that that's something that really works well in my classes. So I use this book when I'm teaching imperfect and preterite. And like I said, if this was a level 3 or a level 4, I would have to teach that lesson first. In our class, we would go over what are the endings for preterite? What are the endings for imperfect? That might be 2 units for you. So this might come at the end of those 2 units when we're looking at comparing when to use imperfect and when to use preterite. In my classroom, we go over all the different acronyms for preterite. So we have the SCAP, right? The single completed action in the past. We have interruptions. We have the beginning or end, that light bulb moment, all of those times. For the imperfect, we go over the DART acronym, right? You know what that is with me, the description, the action in progress, the repeated and habitual, time, simultaneous actions, and then inside verbs. That's always a hard one for them to grasp. When do I use the inside verb for imperfect when it's not an outward action? So after we've done all the worksheets, you have all of those. You've done the worksheets, your curriculum, I'm sure, provides you with the fill-ins. This is something that now takes it to a next level. Now they're looking at how do I see it in action in a written form. So I'm going to go ahead and open up here to chapter 2. Okay, I just have to scroll down here. Okay, I'm in chapter 2. So here's something where the kids are cooking. This is a story about Dia de los Muertos, and the kids are trying to cook their mom breakfast because that coincides with Dia de los Muertos. So here we're reading, and this is something where I might read aloud on the smartboard. I might have the narrator read with my students, or if it's a more advanced level and I'm using this as a preterite imperfect review, I might have the students pair off or even read individually. This is something that you could do chapter per day, or you could read a couple chapters at a time, or even assign this as a homework lesson. So I would have the students read through, and I would first exemplify, or I do first exemplify on the board. Okay, let's find some verbs. Can anybody find a preterite verb? Okay, and I'm going to use, where's my tools here? Here's my annotate tools. Just learned how to do some annotation here. All right, let me just find the, okay. So here we see empezaron. Someone's going to say, okay, there's empezaron. Great. Can somebody find me an imperfect verb? Okay, great. Here's ayudaba. Here's podían. Great. Okay. So maybe they want to go through first and identify where are the imperfect and preterite verbs? How many are there? Then comes the question of why. Why is the first, oh, here's another one, entraron. Why are the first two in preterite? And then here, these two circled ones are imperfect. What's the reason? Okay, so entraron, they entered into the kitchen. Okay, that's going to be a scap. That's a single completed action. Great. Empezaron, they began to look for ingredients. That's the beginning. Great job. Now we see imperfect. Ayudaba. Why is it imperfect if it's they helped? Isn't that an action? Well, it's each year. Oh, right, the context clue. There's cada año. And that's why the students, the children were able to help. That's an inside verb, to be able to. And you could continue and continue. An extension activity like this would be, for example, find me 10 verbs in the preterite, find me 10 verbs in the imperfect. Explain to me why. Utilizing the tools that we've talked about, like SCAP, like DART, whatever acronyms you use in your classroom, whatever you've set up ahead of time and they've been quizzed on, or you've had a summative assessment already, now they've mastered it, hopefully. Can they find it in real context? Can they understand it in real context? I also might say to them, find me an example of a SCAP, an interruption, and a beginning and an end for preterite. Find me every example for DART, find me an inside verb. And then they could submit that to me on, we use Canvas in my district. Maybe you're using Google Classroom. Maybe you want them just to handwrite it and submit to you a piece of paper, but they're hunting and finding it, understanding why it was used, and then seeing the larger context in total. So that really works for me as a way to just enhance that lesson. And imperfect preterite is one of those that takes a long time for the students to understand. And I know you know that if you've ever taught an upper level, we repeat that lesson many times. We teach it in my district in the 3s, we repeat it in the 4s, and I go over that again as an AP teacher just to make sure they understand that difference, because it is such a different kind of use of past tense than we're used to as English speakers. Okay, so if you have any questions on that, please feel free to write that down. I am going to come at the end and take about 15 minutes of questions. So if there's any extension questions you have about how I would, further the lesson or anything else about that imperfect preterite, please feel free to jot it down. And there'll be time for questions at the end of the presentation. So I'm going to move back then to the Flangoo site. Oh, I have to erase my. Here I'm learning here. Let's erase all of these. Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the Flangoo site now, and I'm going to open the reader Andres Quiere Amigos. This is a really cute story about a little boy named Andres who starts his freshman year at high school, and he doesn't have any friends. So this is a pretty easy read for context. It's all about sports, which I taught this year to my freshman students with this book. And we talked about sports, and we're learning about saber and conocer. So this is a pre-level 1 on the Flangoo site. Pre-level 1 means it's a very beginner book, and it really is. I taught this to my freshmen who are actually level 3, and it's an honors class. And like I mentioned before, this is a book that they understood 100%. We did not need to spend a lot of time on definitions. They really got it at first glance, but it helped me underscore the lesson I was teaching them on saber and conocer. So I'm going to go ahead and open here. And again, this is something that I would teach, or this is a reader that I would use. Not sure why that's highlighted. Oh, I want to go back to chapter number 1. Hold on one second, please. Just trying to get to chapter 1. There we go. This is something that I would use after I've taught the formation of saber, the formation of conocer. We've already done some worksheets like we typically do in a regular year where you're picking which one, you're conjugating it correctly, and now we're seeing it used in context. So here we have Andres, and again, you're going to see each reader has the rollover vocab words. We can review ordinal numbers here. We're talking about how to describe him. There's a lot of really useful vocab here for especially some beginner levels. And then we see here, here's our first use of conocer. I just want to, trying to highlight this one again. Format. Oh, it's not letting me highlight. Hang on one second. Maybe can I spotlight? Okay, it's not letting me highlight for the moment.
We can see your arrow if you just want to.
You can see the arrow?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm going to try and okay, I'm into draw now. Okay. All right, there we go. So here's conocer. I'll just be picking some bigger lines as we go through the different readers here. Okay, so there's our first use of conocer. Él quiere conocer a chicos nuevos. He wants to meet some new friends. This poor little Andres is a new student and doesn't have any friends here. So here's our first example of conocer. It's in the infinitive tense because there's a verb conjugated ahead of time. That's something we would go over. Andres no conoce a nadie. Here's a use of it conjugated. Here it is again. He wants to learn some new friends. We see it used after an infinitive. So even for some more advanced classes, like my level 3, these are the extra grammar tidbits that we might be picking apart as well. In addition to just conocer means you want to know a new person or you want to feel familiar about something. It also is going to lend to a review of the personal a, because conocer a chicos nuevos, no conoce a nadie, conocer a nuevos amigos. I don't have to keep repeating myself. You guys know all of this, but that lends itself to even more review. So it's the basic, okay, find conocer in the story. Why are they using conocer? Oh, he wants to meet new friends. He doesn't know anyone. He wants amigos nuevos. And then, okay, so we're using the personal a because we're talking about people. So that would lend itself to that as well. Okay, I'm going to go ahead then to chapter 7. So we're going to look a little bit ahead and see what happens now when we see saber used. Here we go, chapter 7. And like I said, it's right at the top, real easy to scroll through. Get rid of these. Okay. Okay, so ¿qué puede practicar? What can he practice? What can he do? So it says here he wants to meet some new friends. Wait, I think I jumped ahead to the wrong. Sorry, guys. I got a little ahead of myself. I skipped over saber. So in the book here, at the very end of the chapter, it talks about him going from sport to sport. And at the end, he doesn't know how to play the sport. He doesn't know how to do the different activities. So here's the use of no sabe. No sabe recoger la pelota. He doesn't know how to pick up the ball. So here we see we're using saber for knowing how to do an activity. There's no personal a because it's not a person, and it's followed by the infinitive. So for example, we review when two verbs go walking, the first does the talking. I'm sure you've heard that expression before. You might even use that in your classroom. So when you want to say you know how to do something or you don't know how to do something using saber, you're going to have to follow with an infinitive. So now we search through the book for what does he know how to do and what does he not know how to do. Okay, and at the very end, we can see at the end chapter that he does finally meet some friends. Okay, if we go to the end, we see that he meets some friends. He knows how to play music. Okay, let's see if I can just move this over here back to my draw. Okay, he knows how sabe tocar muy bien el piano. And then he meets all these new friends. He meets Miguel, Julia, chicos de la banda. So this leads to an extension activity of who does he meet? What does he learn how to do? And what does he know and what does he not know how to do? Obviously, he doesn't know how to play any of the sports because as you read through the chapter, it tells you that he doesn't know how to use a tennis racket. He doesn't know how to swim, but he does know how to play the piano. So at the end, there is something that he does know how to do, all using the verb saber. Okay, and it's really neat too. At the end of every reader, there are extension activities that you can open and see what they are. So there's multiple choice questions, which I kind of walked you through earlier, but each one has these different extension activities that you can open and see a PDF that you could print out and hand out to students. So this one has a great extension activity for this book where you're going over colors, what the kids know how to do, what does he decide to practice? And at the end, after he goes through all the sports, for saber and conocer, I would have a different activity of ¿Qué sabe Andrés? ¿Qué no sabe Andrés? ¿A quiénes conoce Andrés? And I might even, for my more advanced students, flip it over to them and make them do maybe even a recorded dialogue, like ¿Qué sabes hacer tú? ¿Qué deportes sabes hacer? con quienes juegas o a quienes conoces cuando juegas los deportes. I would even have them do a partnered activity where they personalize it a little bit more. They see Andres's journey and now they personalize for themselves. What do they know how to do? What do they not know how to do? And who do they know when they're doing those activities? So my freshmen really loved this one, and they ate that up. They love that extension activity, going through the different sports, writing down the different colors. And like I said, they're a little bit more advanced than the context of this reader, but they really understood it at first glance and they liked it. And it was really confidence building for them, especially as freshmen, because I think a lot of freshmen can relate to not knowing many kids when they get to school. Okay, we're going to move ahead now to Aurita. This is a really cute reader. Again, back to the Flangoo face page here. And here's Aurita. This is a level 1. This is a cute story about a boy named Wyatt who's living in Mexico and learning that the word Aurita doesn't really mean right now. So when his friend says, I'm coming right now might be hours and hours and hours later. So I use this with basically a review for Ser and Estar. This could be for any level, because Ser and Estar, like imperfect preterite, we repeat at all different times in our curriculum, because it's something that students really have to master. When to use Ser. I teach my students the tonic method. I don't know if anybody's heard of that before. Ser is used for tonic: time, origin, nationality, identity, and characteristic. And then we master, what does that mean? We go through examples, we practice conjugation. Versus Estar, how you feel and where you are. Always use the verb estar. So I kind of differentiate it like that for them. And that seems to really work for my students. In this reader, I would do the same thing as I've mentioned in my other readers, or my other mini lessons here. I would quiz the students on conjugation. I would make sure they have a general idea of the difference. If this is an advanced class, they already know that, and you can just dive right into the reader and use that as your review for them finding the verbs and understanding why they are being used. So I'm just going to jump right in here so you can see an example here. Okay, chavos modernizados. Another thing that I like about Flangoo here is the integration of colloquialism. So chavos, you see the definition there, casual Mexican word for teenager. My students ate that up. They were calling each other chavos all day long. So it's really nice how Flangoo does incorporate some authentic colloquialisms that are school appropriate, so your students can feel a little bit more authentic. And we all know that kids like to use popular slang. So that's something that again, popular school appropriate slang, but that's something that my students really liked. So here, right from the start, we see the use of Ser and Estar. And again, if this was a more advanced class, maybe like an intermediate level, I would just dive right in and say, okay, guys, where are you seeing Ser? Where are you seeing Estar, and why? If this is a beginner level, I might walk them through it and say, okay, here is the story of two chicos, chavos modernizados. Uno es Mexicano, el otro es norteamericano. Right off the bat, we see 3 uses of the verb ser. Él es muy casual. Okay, why are we using the verb ser here? Well, if we go back to the tonic method, it's not time, it's not origin. Uno es Mexicano, he is Mexican, that's nationality. The other is North American, same thing, nationality. He's very casual. That's a characteristic. We're defining who he is. Great. So now we scroll through. We see that he is not punctual, because that's the whole point of the story. This boy doesn't come on time. So he's that would be another characteristic here. Then we see right down here, oh, it almost fit right in that circle. All right, I'm going back to my drawing tab here. Okay, so está en el centro de México. The town is San Miguel. It's in the center of Mexico. That's our first example of estar right here. So how you feel and where you are, always use the verb estar. Well, is that a feeling? No, it's a location. It's in the center of Mexico. So you can go through the whole story and pick out tons of examples between Ser and Estar. Like I said, it's a cute story. It's very easy to understand as they travel through different parts of San Miguel, and they go to different stores. So it's a nice repetition of vocab of stores as well. That's something later on down the line in a couple months, I'm going to talk about enhancing vocabulary through readers. So that's something that you might want to join me for at another time, how to integrate different vocab units through the readers. And this one would be terrific for stores. So as a final extension activity, I might ask the students, especially the beginners, make 2 columns. List 10 examples of when you find ser and list 10 examples of when you find estar. Or I might say to them, okay, chapter 1, I want you to tally how many times the verb ser was used, how many times the verb estar was used. Can you identify how many T's were there, how many times? How many O was their origin, or N for nationality? I might make it almost like a game. How many can you find? But for my more advanced students, I would just dive right in and have them start looking at it, understanding it, and then maybe asking them to write something afterwards describing the 2 boys. ¿Cómo son los chavos? ¿Dónde están los chavos? Turn it into a written piece, or even a partnered conversation, because we can never get enough of those between the students. So that's something I would certainly look at. All right, we have a couple minutes left. I didn't include this on the graphic organizer, but I really wanted to share with everyone one final thing for some more advanced classes. Do we have another 2 minutes for that? Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So this is something new on the Flangoo site, and we have here we go. We have some graphic organizer, we have some graphic novels that are DC comic related. Black Canary, I'm going to open that. And we all know how much, especially middle school students, love graphic novels. My kids really love them. My own children love graphic novels because they're easy to read, they're fun, and usually the pictures are really good too. So Black Canary is really cool. And we have, this is one of our readers that is in every level. It's a level 3, a level 2, a level 1. And I'm just going to show you really quick, because I am going to talk about this more in another Wednesday workshop about differentiation. But it's really cool how each reader is written on a different level with different vocabulary for the student and the student's ability level. So if we just take a quick look at chapter 3, this is something that I might give to my more advanced students as a chapter analysis on verb tense, for example. I might say, okay, let's take a look at a level 3 here. Just move this browser out of the way. Okay, sorry, I lost my tab there. Okay, so if we, and I still have a circle there. Okay. So if we look at a level 3 here, and we just see all the blurbs, you can see how they're translated into Spanish. It's just really cool. So even if we had the students analyze one chapter in a level 3 and a level 2 and a level 1, and they can see how the different verb tenses are created. This is a level 3, so this is definitely for a more advanced student, or definitely an honors level. And the blurb here says, supongo que necesitarás. We see supongo que. Suponer is definitely an irregular verb. It's not something we usually use with our beginner levels. And here's the future tense used. This is a more academic tense than just a plain old present tense. It's something that our more advanced classes would get. Same thing here, no pasará, future tense. The next blurb has pensé. Okay, we see that here. Pensé, que tu y papá, and there's our imperfect tense, iban. So we see all different tenses. Discutimos, again, a verb that we don't use too often in our beginner levels. So we can see here that the different verbs are all over the place. We have, just like we talk in regular speech, we're combining all different verb forms. If you then go to the level 2, chapter 3, you're going to see how it's very different. It's written for a less advanced student. And I'm going to have to get rid of my tools there, I think. Erase those. So same chapter, same blurbs. So instead of supongo, now we have vas a necesitar. So if this was a more higher level class, I might say, okay, why do you think it was changed? Or is it similar in meaning? Or what has changed? We went from future tense now to ir a plus infinitive. We see same thing here, va a pasar. Here we have pensaba, because this is an intermediate level. We're still going to have imperfect preterite, but it's written a little bit differently. The verbs are less less combined. We're trying to streamline it a little more rather than putting future and preterite and imperfect all together. Last thing I want to show you is if we go to a level 1, let me get back to my page here. I just want to show you what the level 1 would look like. Okay, so here's level 1, same chapter, same blurbs. Go back down. So now we have Cray-OK. That's a basic in our chapter. That's a level 1 or level 2 Spanish. I believe that's something very easy for students to remember. I believe that you need present tense, no va a pasar. We're using more basic verbs that we give out in the beginner levels. We have here dices que. We're using verbs that the students know mostly. Hablar. The level 3 said discutimos. Here we have hablamos. So if you go from the more advanced to level 3 to level 2 to level 1, the students will really see how the verb forms have changed. The overall meaning is the same, but the use of future, the use of imperfect preterite, the use of the actual verb itself, the vocabulary is changing as well. So that's something I like to do with my more advanced students. And also by having 3 different levels, it really allows you to differentiate. A more advanced student is going to be able to read the level 2 or level 3 because they already know the future. Or you might have a student, the future tense, I mean. You might have a student that's really excelling and you want to differentiate for that student. So the class might be reading level 1, but you're pushing that student to read the level 2. They're getting the same context, they're getting the same story, but you're pushing them a little bit more for vocabulary and for verb formation. So I found that to be super helpful in when I want to differentiate for those type of students. And that's something that I'm going to spend some time talking about as well at the next workshop on February 2nd about differentiation. Because that's something we all, I'm sure, are doing in our classrooms, especially now when we have students in the classroom. I'm sure some of you have some virtual students as well. We're looking for ways to differentiate all the time. So that's something that I think these readers can really help us do as well. Okay, so I am going to stop sharing at this point. That concludes my portion. I hope I taught you some good tips and tricks and that there are some takeaways for you that you can share with your colleagues or anyone who teaches a world language. And I guess I'd like to see if there's any questions or if anyone would like something clarified.
There were a couple of questions in the chat.
Okay.
But I don't know if you want to read them or if those
Sure.
people want to just unmute themselves and ask those directly if anybody has any questions.
Okay, I'm just scrolling up. There's quite a bunch here.
If you go to Erica at 7:23 p.m.
Okay.
That's the first
Yep,
one.
that's the first one right there.
Okay, let me get to that. Erica. Okay, how many lessons are you using Andres Quiere Amigos to cover 4 or 5 level? How many days? I've only used this book with Spanish 1 and it's a very different experience. So this is something that I would use towards the end of the period. Could be used almost as an exit ticket because the chapters are really quick. So I would say you can get through this. I forget how many chapters are in that book, maybe 6 or 7. I mean, I think you could kind of get through that in about 5 days if you're only doing about a chapter and a half a day. Otherwise, I mean, it could definitely go quicker than that. That's with my level 3s. With level 1, that might take a little bit longer because you might be spending more time on vocabulary. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask a follow-up if you'd like.
Yeah, I found this is my first year using Flangoo in the classroom, so I just found that this was a basic book, and we went through it and discussed it and highlighted like the words that I was hoping that they would maybe come away with and bring into the next book that we did with the Spanish 1. But I found it, that's very interesting. I never thought of isolating saber and conocer and diving in and using it like that. So I just was curious if I don't have that level that I teach, but yeah, if you chunked it up or just knocked it out in a day, because it is only 5 chapters, or it sounds like you chunked it up like a little bit at the end,
Right. I think it
of a
also
class
depends if
day.
you're block schedule or not. I think that
Right.
might be, I am not block schedule, so I see my students for about 42 minutes a day. And by the time they come in and sit down, it's never really 42 minutes. So
Yeah.
that might be something that I would spend about 10 minutes per period, I would say, as
Okay.
almost like an ending activity or even a warm-up activity. I might have the chapter on the smartboard as they come in and say, open up your Flangoo account and let's read the chapter, something like that. But you actually could also do the whole thing. Like you said, you could do it maybe if you're looking for something to do as you finish a unit before you start the next one. I'm always looking for, what could I do just for the day? I'm not ready to start the new vocab list. I'm not ready to dive right in. We just wrapped it all up. They need a break. I need a break. That's
Mhm.
also a really good thing for Flangoo, because you can just pop in a quick reader and maybe spend a day or two on it. And it's cultural and they're learning something.
Okay. I had a second question. Can I ask it to you now?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay. So the other thing I've been trying to do is to steer my teaching towards like a more comprehensible input approach. And so less like front up with, oh, here are the vocabulary lists and here are the grammar, but more like here's the input and then doing pop out grammar and, focusing on vocabulary, but less vocabulary,
Mhm.
but maybe more concentrated so that they actually come away with knowing that. Because I was just finding my students incredibly overwhelmed every year. So this is what I'm trying this year. And I just didn't know, this may not be your style of instruction, but how else can I use Flangoo besides like reading and rereading and doing the comprehension questions? And I mean, I got some ideas today, like for pop out grammar, which was awesome. But I don't know. I was just trying to find more creative ways to jump from the story into.
Right. There's a lot of different extension activities. That's something else that I'm going to be plugging in a different workshop.
Okay.
What are some extension activities? There's character boards you could be doing. I mean, lots of creative hands-on things. There's some like making papel picado from one of the Dia de los Muertos readers. There's a lot of different extension activities. There's also teacher guides that you could access that have all of these different ideas for each chapter. There are some
okay.
other things that you can look into.
Okay, I didn't realize those were there. Thank you.
So there's plenty of things. Okay, I'm going to go. So this is from Maureen. I have trouble with students making several accounts and then I have to delete their accounts. I also have students that have trouble
We
logging.
answered that one.
Oh, you
Yep,
answered,
we answered that
okay.
one. I think the next one actually is from Jill.
It's
Jill
7.
Vargas. Yeah, Jill, did you want to just unmute and ask your question or?
No, I'm also switching over to CI instruction and I'm trying to implement the PACE model as much as possible. And I was just curious on how you would like take a reader and actually begin it from a grammar standpoint.
From a grammar.
PACE.
So I'm not familiar with PACE. I don't know.
It's just a way to teach grammar, but not as, okay, here are the rules, is how you, but using stories and using
Okay.
visuals to teach grammar, presentation, attention, co-construct, evaluation. And
Okay.
that was my first question. And my second question, Steve just answered, never mind.
Okay.
It just like, Jamie, you just seem like the type of professor I would love to have as my professor. How
Thank
would you set up a lesson from the
So
very
I think
beginning?
I think it depends really, what is the end result that you want to get? Is it culture that you want them to take away from it? Is it the grammar? It seems to me like you're asking about how, like if it's saber and conocer, you don't want to stand up at the board and say, okay, here's the verb saber, say, sabe, sabe. You don't want that basic ritual. So I would just dive right in. I would, really talk up about, there's a new boy in town. His name is Andres. I would set it up more of a story. And I think that's what PACE is. It's more of storytelling to get the kids to understand. So they're going to really understand the verb conocer when they saw no conoce a nadie. He doesn't know anyone. And then later they're going to talk about what he knows how to do. So that's going to lend itself together. Oh, there's two knows. One that he knows people or he doesn't know anyone, and what he doesn't know how to do. How come there's two verbs used here? And in English, it's the same to know. So that's kind of how I would let it organically stem from the reader, so that you really are teaching them grammar without them knowing they're getting a grammar lesson.
Yeah, that's more or less what pace is. Okay.
Okay.
And
I hope
Steve
that's helpful.
answered me and Mavi's last question, and that was if there's a way to search for a grammar concept to direct us to a reader, and they're working on that. Thank you,
Okay.
guys.
Sure. I see Jamie said she can use Black Canary tomorrow. That's great. I can't wait to hear how it goes for you. All right. And next question, is there anything?
I think that's all of the questions that were there for you. The rest, there were just a couple of just technical questions about it.
Okay.
One of the questions on here real quick, somebody had asked if there was a way to print out the student reports. So there is a student report that you can download. I'm not exactly sure how much information is on there right now. We are working on trying to improve that so that there's more information on there. But that's in your Flangoo. When you log into it, it'll be under your student management. Up at the top, it says download list, and that'll actually download your entire student list and information about those students. It's like a big CSV file. I don't think it's as complete as we want it to be yet. So there will be a better report. It is coming. It's just taking a little while to format that and make it look usable, because right now it's just this giant mess. So we're trying to fix that up, but hopefully that'll be soon.
Hi there. I had posed a question about a Spanish 1. Like, if you have any readers that you could show us, that would be super, super basic, or kind of geared more towards a grammar topic, not where it already includes like all the verbs like tiene and quiere and va, and but just more like for the very, very beginning of Spanish. Do you have anything like that?
So if you go to the pre-level one, like the Andres book that I showed, that would be one that's very basic grammar, and the pre-level ones have a lot of repetition in them. So it sounds like that's something you're looking for that doesn't have a lot of diverse verbiage in it. So I would check those out. There's a handful of them, and they're all different. One's about sports, one's about video games, one's about cooking, lots of different topics for you to choose from. But the pre-level one, that's what you would be looking for.
Okay, thank you.
There are also some level 1 shorts, we call them, and they're a little bit harder, but I don't know Spanish. And as you proceed through it, it's very short. It's like one chapter. As you proceed through it, it builds on itself, and I start to understand as I go and learn, and that might be an option for you as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, that's a good idea, especially if you're looking for just one period to work through a text. The level 1 shorts would be like more like one class period, where the pre-level 1 readers would be more of an extension over various days. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for time wise.
Okay, thank you so much.
Can I get everyone's opinion on something? I use Flangoo for FVR, free volunteering reading. We read 10 minutes Tuesday, 10 minutes Thursday. Then they have to read 30 minutes outside of class. That is a class participation grade. They get to read whatever book they want to, whatever level they want to, as long as they're reading for 50 minutes. Is that good or bad? Is that rigorous, too easy, too hard? Oh, I teach levels 3s and 4s.
I actually know of several teachers who do that exact same thing or something very close to it. So I don't think there's anything odd about it at all.
I tell them I don't care what you read as long as you read.
When we do surveys, it's pretty split down the middle. A lot of teachers, 2 to 3 times a year, will pick one title and the whole class will read it. And then they call it, a lot of them call it like Flangoo Fridays, I think. And then they have the FER portion on Friday where they open all the books up and say, read for so many minutes. It's pretty interesting.
I think that's a great idea. The more you can get the kids to read and they can pick what they're interested in, that's buy-in from the students. That's a win.
Also, from a technical thing, someone said when you get into Flangoo, you can't exit out.
You can't exit. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. You can absolutely exit out.
Yeah, yeah, okay. I mean, can you make the students open Flangoo and just lock it on Flangoo and not open another tab? So you know that they're reading.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, so here's how that works. There is no way to hold on just a second here. All right, so there is no way to actually prevent a student from switching tabs or going to, another program or just turning it on and walking away. But it stops recording their time if they do any of those things. Flangoo only records active time. So you have to have it as the active tab and you have to be doing something on there. You actually have to be scrolling and reading and participating. If you go to a different tab or different program, it will stop recording your time. If you let it sit idle and then watch television, it's only going to record your time for about a minute and then it's going to stop recording your time. And it'll actually fade the screen out. And a little message will come on that says, "Are you still there?" And you actually have to click that for it to continue. Another question that came up was if somebody's using Flangoo, if they can read the same story over and over and over again, and if that's going to count towards the minutes that they use. And in the student, in the manage students, where you see all the list of students, you can actually click the button that says manage next to each student, and it'll give you a breakdown of what books they were in and how much time they spent in those books. So by doing that, you'll know if they spent 300 minutes in one book, they're probably reading the same book over and over and over again. It's time for them to broaden their horizons and read more books.
Hey, Chuck, can you share your screen? Someone asked, can you quickly show where the teacher guides are?
Oh, yeah, sure. I can do that real quick if you like.
Isn't that in the answer keys?
So it is in the answer keys, but it's very possible that you might not be seeing it in the answer keys if you have a free version, because the answer keys are only available in a paid version.
And why is that?
Because we didn't want students to create a whole bunch of accounts and have access to all the answers.
Oh, that's right.
So yeah, if you click in the top right where you can access all of your account settings, and I go to, where are you? Answer keys right here. Any of the books that actually have a printed version or a teacher edition or any of those things, they're going to be located here. So here I can grab the print books. Here I can grab the teacher guides. But another way to get to it, if you just want, is to just head straight on over to teachersdiscovery.com and you can just look for the teacher's guides there. The teacher guides are sold separately. They are not a part of Flangoo. They are separate. And that's mostly because of copyrights and all that kind of stuff. There we go.
All right, I think that's it.
Yeah, did anybody have any more questions for Jamie? All right, well, Jamie, my gosh, thank you so much for this. This was really awesome. And I'm definitely looking forward to next month.
Thanks. Thanks everyone for being here. I hope there were some good takeaways for you tonight.
Definitely. All right, everybody, you will be getting an email from me. It will have your certificate of attendance, and I'm also going to include a link so that you can register for the for next month. Although it's going to be this exact same link that you used to get into this one, it'll be for the next one. but it's probably a good idea to register anyway, because that way you'll get like, the synopsis and breakdown of what's going to be discussed and links and all that kind of cool stuff. So definitely
reminder.
register. A reminder for people like me who race on at the last minute because we forgot again. Yeah, all that good stuff is coming. So thanks again so much, everybody, for being here. Jamie, thank you again. And I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Flangoo.com